Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome to the bonus show. First, let's talk about a story coming to us from France, and then we'll get into the vacation stories. Once in a while, France comes up and annoys the hell out of me. It's happened again. This time, a pub has been fined because customers took their empty glasses back to the bar. The pub was fined 9,000 euros because of this, quote, undeclared labor, which is completely just outrageous. Can you imagine, like, your favorite pub being sued for being fined 9,000 euros, which is what, like $25,000 or something like that?
No, 9,000 euros is like $12,000.
More like $12,000. Yeah. Right. I reversed that. I tripled it instead of doing 1/3. But $12,000 just because customers were nice enough to bring their glasses back to the bar.
It is very odd. I don't understand it. It seems like some kind of absurd technicality that is completely counterproductive in every way. However, has there been any kind of commentary or legal opinion about it?
It seems like there's just, I don't know, according to this article, it's just they have to pay it, and that's just how it goes. The bar is saying it's a trademark of ours. We want the customer to feel like they're at home. I don't think they force customers to do this, but I don't know if there's any legal recourse here.
It's just weird because isn't it common at many restaurants that, like, at little cafes, very often you kind of bus your own table? Although now that I'm thinking, when I was in Italy over the summer and Switzerland, there was really, even at small places, you weren't expected to bus your table. So maybe that counts as undeclared forced labor or something too. I don't know.
Well, I think what it is that when you're at a restaurant where I think you have the option of busing your own table. I think the restaurant would appreciate it if you did that, but I don't think there's any way they can force you to do that. I don't think, it's not like that's mandatory.
Yeah, that's right. You're not going to get fined if you don't bus it. You just might be looked at like, hey, we bus here.
Right. They will probably just give you dirty looks. So anyway, it's a pretty steep fine, pretty obnoxious. And shame on you, France. Shame. All right, what's this? Let's start with your vacation stories.
Okay. I went to Mexico, went to the beach for 5 days. It was pretty good. Rained a couple days, but still warm enough to kind of be out. Then the sun came out and it was great. Hung out, really didn't do very much. I did have a very unfortunate incident, which is that when I spend time in the sun, my hair lightens significantly. I'm used to this. This happens all the time. For the first 5 years of my life, I had very light blonde hair, so maybe it just comes back out when I hang out in the sun. However, started looking closely after spending a couple days in the sun and identified what was not a blonde hair, but clearly was a white hair, or at least it appeared to be. I had my girlfriend pluck the hair. I examined it very closely, and Lewis, there was absolutely no question at all. It was bone white. It was whiter than white. And I then subsequently found 3 actual white hairs. And the weird thing is, I was kind of upset about it. But at the same time, when I turned 29 almost a year ago, I actually said it. I said, I think before my 30th birthday, I'm going to have some white hairs. And, I don't know if these types of things can be self-fulfilling prophecies or not, but there it is. 5-6 weeks before my 30th birthday, I have 3 white hairs.
Well, it may not be a trend. Sometimes this just happens. Sometimes a few of your hairs are a different color. I have some white hairs on my beard here, and they've been that way for quite a while.
Well, you also have some white hairs kind of around, above the ear kind of.
Yeah, I think it's just, I don't know. I think sometimes they're just like that, and it's not a sign that you have more hairs turning that color. I could be wrong.
Right.
But I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I'm worried per se. It's just I'm turning 30 years old. It's like, holy shit, Lewis, what the hell is going on? Every day on Facebook, people we went to school with that are in our graduating class are turning 30 years old. It's pretty absurd. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. Well, certainly I am not looking forward to it, but you're turning 30 uh, many months before I do.
Yes, incredibly many, 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 many months. 9 months.
9 months. Well, I mean, I would have said years if it were over a year,
Yeah.
but okay. Is that your only vacation story? Nothing crazy happened in Mexico?
No, really nothing that crazy happened. I did have a tipping incident where I try to tip just about everybody. So, for example, on the way out, I parked my car at the airport and then, or near the airport, and then you have like a little shuttle over. I tipped the guy $2, $1 a bag, put my bag and my girlfriend's bag in the van, and then took it out. Then the line was really long inside the airport, so we did curbside check-in, and you're kind of like very aggressively encouraged to tip there. So again, I tipped $1 a bag. There's $2. And we got to Mexico, and then there was a ride to the hotel, and then I tipped that guy. Did great tipping all throughout our stay there, American style tipping, even though they expect sometimes 5 to 10% would be considered normal. I was tipping a nice solid 18% the whole time. And then the last day, I had gotten rid of all of my currency, and I didn't have any American or Mexican cash. I just had credit and debit cards with me. And we got a ride to the airport. Mind you, the ride from the hotel to the airport was maybe a 12-minute ride. And we get out, and the guy stands right in front of me and says, this is all in Spanish. He says something like, well, if you consider that the service was good, please be aware that I work on tips. And I say, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I have no cash at all left. I'm just out. I do apologize. And he says, what about credit card? Or do you have a card? And I'm like, yeah, I have cards. He's like, okay, if you go into the airport and you go into the left, up into the terminal, there's a machine there where you can get money out, which of course has a $7 surcharge. And I said, you know what? I'm sorry. I have to catch my flight. I'm just really sorry. And the guy looks at me and he just starts shaking his head very, very angrily, and then gets into the car and drives away. I've never experienced such an aggressive tip request combined with such a disdainful reaction to not getting a tip. And I mostly tip, but for some reason, the fact that 4, 5, 10, 20 people were happy with their tips during my trip doesn't matter. The fact that this guy was so annoyed really is sticking with me.
Yeah. Well, there's really nothing you can do. I mean, he'll live, and you'll go on with your life. But
it's like I paid for the ride, and I'm tipping people, and there's other people in the car who also tipped. I mean, I just didn't have any cash. I'm sorry. I missed one tip.
Yeah. Well, you shouldn't feel bad about it.
All right,
you didn't
thank
have
you.
the cash. I mean, how can you be inconvenienced? Forced to go all over the place. I mean, I usually tip in situations like that too, but I feel like it's people just taking advantage of an American system where in restaurants there's tips, and I think it just kind of translates. Like if you were not in the area you were at, if you were at some hotel, I don't know, in a non-touristy area where only Mexicans stay, would these tips even be requested of you? Or maybe because you are American, but are they requested of Mexicans staying there?
I don't know. It's a good question. And, I think no matter where you are, you're expected to leave a tip for the housekeeping staff in the room, which I did do. I forgot to mention that tip at the hotel. I think you're making a good point, though, which is that when countries see Americans traveling, because they know of the tipping culture here, they may expect more tips. Whereas when I was traveling in Europe over the summer, tips were very minimal. No one was mad. Everybody, particularly in Switzerland, it's very clear that they're well compensated. They're paid a living wage. Maybe well compensated is an exaggeration, but certainly it's not the $2.63 an hour or whatever that wait staff get here in the U.S. And there's not an expectation of anything more than just a coin left.
Right. All right. Well, my vacation was more of a chore than anything. I went to Florida to see my grandmother, who recently had a fall and is complaining about, oh, I'm so tired, I'm nauseous, I feel so drained, I have no energy. The hospital told her she had a urinary tract infection. She's on this antibiotic that's making her sick. She has to get off the antibiotic. And I walk into all of that. And it turns out she didn't have a urinary tract infection.
Oh, that's good.
She was making herself very tired and sick because she was taking tramadol, this muscle relaxer that they prescribed to her for her back pain. So she'd have nothing to eat, nothing to drink. She would take these pills. It would make her very sick and weak, and then she would not want to eat anymore. Then she'd keep taking these pills. I didn't know she was taking these pills the whole time. I obviously would have realized that this was what was going on. But she has this has been happening for years. She has no concept of the consequences of what she's doing to herself in an attempt to try to make herself feel better.
Right.
It didn't even occur to her that perhaps these pills were having a bad effect on her. She starts complaining about abdominal pain and soreness. Well, some physical therapist gave her this little belt that you're supposed to put around, it's kind of like a brace. She wears it incorrectly all the time and puts it on way too tight, and wonders, why she has this abdominal pain. Well, in her mind, it has nothing to do with this belt that she thinks she's been wearing properly. I had to hide it so she wouldn't use it anymore. Anyway, it wasn't that as bad as I'm making it sound. I mean, it was just kind of annoying. But I did see the Book of Mormon in Fort Lauderdale, and it was very funny. It kind of did feel like a big South Park episode, of course, with a lot more music and singing. It was very vulgar and profane, and there were Mormons out front handing out cards, directing you to Mormon websites, I guess, so that you will do your own research on Mormonism. And although the play, of course, was about Mormonism to an extent, it didn't really get into detail about what Mormons believe. It would just slide things in here and there that you and I might find silly. Anyway, I highly recommend it. You haven't seen it, right, David?
I have not. The only show I've seen since getting to New York City is Avenue Q, which I do highly recommend also.
All right. And so, yeah, my trip went well. But then on my way home, I get to the airport. I was flying Delta. I get to the check-in line, and there's nobody there at all. And I'm thinking, this is great. There's probably not many people on my flight. And I go swipe my card on the little self check-in screen, and it says something like, I don't know, too late to check in for this flight. And I'm thinking, oh, that's weird. And so the guy at the computer says, oh, what's your name? And, where are you going? I tell him, and I quickly look at my email and tell him the flight number. And he says, uh-oh, that flight already left. And all of a sudden, I just get the worst sinking feeling. I'm like, I am just so down. I'm like, oh, God, great. I'm screwed. I missed my flight. This is going to cost me $1,000. They managed to put me on what would be my first flight, which went from Fort Lauderdale to Atlanta, the one I missed. There's another one. They put me on that.
How much later was that flight?
That flight was leaving when I thought I was supposed to leave on my first flight.
Oh, there you go.
I only had to wait about 20 minutes. And there was almost nobody on the flight. I had my own row. It was very nice. And then I had to go spend the night in Atlanta. And then my next day ticket from Atlanta to Austin was $360. I searched just about every airline that makes that route, and there was nothing cheaper than $360.
Now, what I don't understand is, what was your initial routing supposed to be?
It was supposed to be the same thing. I was supposed to fly to Atlanta and then from Atlanta to Austin.
But if you missed both flights, they would typically just give that seat to someone on standby, and then they could rebook you for no cost.
Well, not really. They rebooked me on the flight to Atlanta, of course. But then the next day, I believe most of those flights were full. And the only seats available, I think, might have been first class. They said that I would have had to pay the difference. The difference was over $400. And then I also thought for a minute that, well, okay, maybe there's a different airline that might be able to accommodate me in the morning on this flight. So I didn't bother with Delta. Also, when I did call Delta before confirming that I wanted to take the flight they put me on to Atlanta. And the guy I was talking to didn't even realize that flight existed. The one I got on 20 minutes later. So I just thought to myself, okay, I'm talking to a fucking idiot here. I don't even want to deal with this. So I didn't. So on my phone, while waiting to get on that 20 minutes to get on the flight to Atlanta, I booked my ticket for the next day. It was also on Delta. And I made it. And I mean, my round trip flight that I missed, everything was $200 there.
Right.
And then this next day, one-way ticket from a 2.5-hour flight from Atlanta to Austin, $360.
That is brutal. That's horrible.
Yeah, that really sucked. And whatever, it's just money. I mean, at least the weather was perfect in Fort Lauderdale. I got to see the ocean. I got to see the play. What can you do? What can you do?
There you go. You live and learn.
That was my vacation. What an exciting, incredible vacation this year. Yeah, great stuff. Hopefully my next one is a little more interesting and doesn't involve caretaking, missing flights, and crap like that. But that's pretty much it. I mean, anything else you'd like to add, David?
No, not really. That seems like mostly it. I think that that's, you did a good thing. You went and saw your grandmother, and there's a lot to be said for that. A lot of people wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that at all. So Lewis should be commended.
Yes, and how do I get repaid for that? By missing my flight and having to spend tons of money. It makes you think that there is no God. But whatever. We'll see everyone later.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.